All right, so we're going to take a deep dive into this report that you sent over the global status of teachers 2024,
Right.
and it's from Education International,
Yep.
which is a huge AAE federation. I mean, we're talking
Massive.
33 million teachers that they represent around the world.
That's right. Yeah. That's one of the things that makes this report so insightful is it's coming directly from the folks who represent those millions of teachers.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of a ground level perspective on what's happening in classrooms around the world.
Yeah, like we said, we're doing a global pulse check on education.
Exactly.
And this is the first one that's been done since the pandemic kind of officially wrapped up.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah, lots changed.
I'm really interested to see what they've uncovered, what kind of lasting impacts they're seeing.
Yeah.
So when you were reading through it, like what was your first impression? Did anything kind of jump out at you?
I mean, honestly, the first thing that hit me was the teacher shortage.
Oh.
It's something that we all hear about,
Mhm.
but the report calls it a global challenge. It even goes as far to say, in some areas, it's a full-blown crisis.
Wow, a crisis.
Yeah.
That's not just like a little shortage here or there.
Right.
Like where is it hitting the hardest?
Well, it's pretty widespread, but there are certain areas that are feeling it much more than others.
Okay.
So, special education is facing a massive shortage right now, for example.
Oh, wow.
Secondary education is in a similar boat, and then STEM fields. Forget about it.
Yeah.
You mentioned your kids' interest in engineering.
Yeah.
Well, this shortage means they might be facing packed classrooms, fewer resources, less individual attention, which could make that path a lot tougher.
Yeah, that's a good point because it's not just like abstract numbers we're talking about.
Right.
Like this actually has real world consequences for students and their futures.
For sure.
So it's not just about getting new teachers into the system then.
Well, that's absolutely crucial, but
Yeah.
the report also reveals a significant attrition problem.
Oh.
Experienced teachers are leaving the profession in droves,
Wow.
and that's a huge loss of expertise. It's really tough to replace.
It makes you wonder why so many experienced teachers are choosing to leave.
Right.
Is it purely a salary issue?
Well, salary is certainly a factor, no doubt about it. But the report highlights a whole web of interconnected reasons.
Oh.
Excessive workloads are a major concern, leading to burnout feelings of just being completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then there's the limited opportunity for career growth within the profession, and perhaps most disheartening, a pervasive lack of respect.
Lack of respect.
It is.
That's troubling.
And it's not just limited to students even.
Okay.
It's societal. It shows up in media portrayals, even government policies. We'll actually get into that a little bit deeper later on in the report.
So it's not just about feeling overworked and underpaid. It's this deeper sense of not being valued.
Exactly. Teachers are leaving because they
Yeah.
feel undervalued and disillusioned. And what's interesting is that these trends aren't uniform across the globe. The report actually found significant regional differences.
Oh, interesting. Like what kind of differences are we talking about?
Well, in some regions, teachers are extremely worried about political interference in education.
Okay.
In others, it's more about a lack of resources and support. So the report does a good job of breaking down those regional nuances.
With all these challenges, though, it makes you wonder, do teachers even have a voice in all of this? Like,
Yeah.
can they organize and advocate for change? Do they have any power?
Now that's where things get really fascinating.
Hmm.
The report really delves into those power dynamics at play. So do teachers have the right to organize and speak out? What mechanisms exist for them to influence policy? The answers might surprise you.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, in some places, teachers' unions are very robust and hold significant bargaining power.
Yeah.
But in other parts of the world, teachers face immense obstacles, even legal ones, in simply forming a union.
Wow.
So advocating for change becomes that much harder.
It almost sounds like in those situations, teaching is viewed less as a profession and more as just a job.
You've hit on a key point there,
Hmm.
and it brings us to another crucial aspect the report tackles. The status of teaching as a whole.
Okay.
How does the public perceive teachers? Are they seen as experts, respected professionals, or simply undervalued and overworked?
Well, knowing what we've already discussed, I'm guessing the picture isn't particularly rosy.
You're right. The report analyzes media representations, public opinion, and the policies that shape how teachers are treated. And in many places, the profession simply isn't valued the way it should be.
Yeah.
And that has a ripple effect on everything from attracting talented individuals to keeping experienced educators in the classroom.
Yeah, I
Uh,
bet.
Absolutely.
So we've got this image problem compounding all these other challenges. It's like a vicious cycle. But, you mentioned earlier the report kind of digs into the regional differences.
Yeah.
Before we get there, though, I'm really curious about this right to education thing. Like, is that actually playing out fairly around the world?
That's a great question, and the report really gets into the complexities there.
Yeah.
While many countries have this right to education enshrined in their laws,
Right.
the reality often falls short of the ideal.
Yeah, I can see how that would be the case, given what we've already discussed.
For sure.
But what specific factors are they seeing hindering this right?
Well, access to resources is a huge one.
Okay.
And we're not just talking about basic supplies here, like textbooks and computers.
Right.
We're talking about access to qualified teachers,
Oh, yeah.
decent facilities, support for students with special needs.
So even if education is technically a right,
Right.
it's meaningless without those foundational elements.
Precisely. And the report finds that resource disparities are a major issue globally.
Okay.
In many countries, there's a vast gulf between the quality of education available to wealthy students compared to those from disadvantaged backgrounds.
Yeah, that's a deeply concerning inequity.
It is.
And what about the role of private education?
Does the report address that at all?
It does, and this is where things get even more nuanced, I think.
Okay.
The report acknowledges that private education can play a role in certain systems,
Yeah.
but it also raises concerns about privatization potentially widening those existing inequalities.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense.
You mentioned you were researching charter schools.
Yeah. A bit.
This report touches on similar models and how their impact on equity can really vary.
So it's like if public schools are struggling with underfunding and then wealthier families opt for private schools,
Right.
that gap just keeps widening.
Exactly. It creates this two-tiered system.
Wow.
And the report actually includes some pretty powerful firsthand accounts from teachers who are working within these systems.
Oh, wow.
They describe the immense challenges of trying to provide a quality education when resources are so stretched thin.
Yeah.
They also voice concerns about the pressure to teach to standardized tests,
Right.
rather than focusing on each student's individual needs.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly demoralizing, especially for teachers who entered the profession passionate about making a difference.
Absolutely.
So if this right to education is being undermined in so many places,
Yeah.
what can be done to course correct?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it.
While the report doesn't offer, a simple solution,
Yeah.
it does put forth some concrete recommendations.
Okay.
Increased public funding for education is a major one.
Okay.
The argument is that if governments truly prioritize quality education, for all they need to invest accordingly.
That seems logical.
Right. What are the suggestions? Well, stricter regulations for private education providers.
Okay.
If they're going to operate, the idea is to hold them accountable to the same standards as public schools
Gotcha.
in terms of curriculum teacher qualifications and ensuring access for all students,
Yeah.
things like that.
Are there any countries that they highlight that are kind of getting this right,
Yeah,
that are successfully providing equitable access?
they do. They spotlight some positive examples,
Oh, okay.
like Finland.
Oh, yeah.
Their robust public education system is often lauded, particularly its strong emphasis on supporting all learners.
Okay.
But even in those success stories, challenges still exist.
Yeah.
No system is perfect.
Right.
There's always room for improvement.
That's a good reminder that this is an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
Makes me think, whose responsibility is it to ensure that this right is actually upheld?
Right.
Is it solely on governments?
Well, that's a complex one.
Yeah.
The report argues for shared responsibility.
Okay.
Governments certainly have a key role,
Uh-huh.
but so do communities, families, individuals.
So that's not just like top-down policy changes. It's a collective effort.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a culture that genuinely values education and supports those working within the field.
Okay.
Respecting teachers, advocating for increased funding, holding elected officials accountable for their decisions regarding education.
Right.
All part of this.
You mentioned earlier that the report includes direct quotes from teachers.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in hearing those firsthand perspectives.
Yeah, me too.
Like, what are teachers saying about the challenges that they're facing?
One quote that really resonated with me was from a primary school teacher in Africa.
Okay.
She said, and I quote, "A teacher in primary school on the government payroll cannot afford to feed their family for 30 days in a month. The salary covers food costs, but we haven't even talked about other things like charcoal, rent, school fees for my children, and medical bills. If I want to buy a house, I will have to take a loan and pay it back each month. This makes the situation worse because my current salary cannot sustain my family for even 2 weeks. So I had to skip some meals in order to move forward.
Wow, that's incredibly poignant.
Yeah,
It's hard to imagine focusing on teaching when you're struggling to meet your own basic needs.
right.
It puts those concerns about salary and respect into sharp relief.
It does. It underscores the real human cost of these systemic issues.
Yeah.
Another powerful quote came from a secondary school teacher in Europe talking about the lack of respect for his profession.
Okay.
He said, "Society thinks that we work fewer hours, that we only work 18 hours a week and do nothing else, and that we get 2 or 3 months of vacation. But the problem is they don't see the paperwork. They don't see all the emails we have to send to parents. I'm thinking about my situation. When I changed schools at my previous school, every parent knew me and every parent knew how I taught and that it worked. But when I changed schools for 3 or 4 months, I had to reassure the parents that my method of working is okay and that their children will learn."
It highlights that disconnect between the public perception of teaching and the reality on the ground.
Yeah.
Sounds exhausting.
It is, and this disconnect contributes directly to this crisis that we're seeing unfold
Yeah.
in education.
You also mention regional differences highlighted in the report.
Right.
Are there any striking examples that come to mind?
Absolutely. For instance, teacher shortages are particularly acute in North America and in the Caribbean.
Oh.
Factors like low pay and difficult working conditions are really driving that trend.
What about other areas?
Well, in Europe, while shortages aren't as severe, there's concern about the impact of austerity measures
Oh, okay.
on education funding and teacher morale. So it's a different set of pressures.
Gotcha.
In Asia Pacific, it's kind of a mixed bag.
Okay.
Some countries were making significant investments in education, while others are falling behind.
So the challenges, while connected, manifest in different ways depending on the region.
Exactly. And in Latin America, the report emphasizes the hurdles posed by political instability and entrenched inequality.
So it really underscores the point that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
You're absolutely right. The report stresses that any efforts to improve education must consider the specific context
Yeah.
of each region.
This has been really illuminating. We've covered so much ground,
We have.
from global shortages to the right to education, regional differences.
For sure.
Those incredibly powerful quotes from teachers.
Yeah, those are really something.
But I know there's more to unpack, especially around teacher well-being.
There is. And that's a crucial aspect we need to delve into.
Yeah. It's been heavy stuff, but really insightful, to kind of get this global view of the challenges that teachers are facing.
Yeah.
But it is important to remember that at the heart of it all are real people.
Right.
These are human beings dealing with these pressures day in and day out.
Absolutely. And the report doesn't shy away from the impact this is having on their well-being,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, even physically.
Yeah.
They're paying a price.
We touched on burnout a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
but what specific concerns does the report highlight when it comes to well-being?
Well, it goes beyond just feeling tired or stressed.
Right.
We're talking about some serious issues: anxiety, depression, insomnia, even physical symptoms.
Oh, wow.
Headaches, digestive problems are on the rise. The report cites studies that show alarming rates of these problems among teachers worldwide.
That's a lot to deal with on top of everything else. I mean, is this being taken seriously by those in charge?
Right.
Are there any support systems in place for teachers who are struggling?
That's where the disconnect becomes even more apparent.
Okay.
While awareness of teacher well-being is growing, the report finds that most governments and school systems are simply not doing enough to address it.
What does that lack of support look like in practice?
Well, there's a severe lack of resources for mental health support. For one,
Okay.
there's insufficient training for school leaders
Okay.
on how to recognize and respond to these issues.
Yeah.
And often there's a culture of silence around these topics,
Right.
which makes it even harder for teachers to seek help.
So they're kind of suffering in silence.
Basically.
What kind of impact does all this have on students?
I mean, think about it from a student's perspective.
Yeah.
If your teacher is burnt out, stressed, disengaged,
Right.
how likely are you to thrive in that kind of learning environment?
Not very likely at all.
Yeah.
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 It makes sense that this would all kind of trickle down.
Exactly.
These teacher well-being is directly linked to student well-being and academic success. So when teachers feel supported and valued, their students benefit directly.
We've uncovered some pretty bleak realities in this report.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, does it offer any hope
Yeah.
for the future of the teaching profession?
I wouldn't say it's all doom and gloom.
Oh,
It's definitely a wake-up call,
uh-huh.
but it also serves as a call to action.
So what are the key takeaways for those who want to see positive change in education?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Well, I think the most fundamental shift is in our mindset. You
Okay.
need to stop viewing teaching as just a job
Right.
and start recognizing it as the essential profession that it truly is.
That sounds great in theory, but how do we actually translate that into tangible action?
Well, there's some concrete steps we can take.
Oh, yeah.
Investing in teacher education and professional development is crucial.
Yeah.
Offering competitive salaries and benefits is essential for attracting and retaining talent.
Creating supportive work environments where teachers feel valued and respected,
Yeah.
that's non-negotiable.
Right.
And giving teachers a real voice in decision-making processes
Okay.
that will empower them and improve the system as a whole.
Those all sound like crucial steps, but also potentially difficult to implement.
Right.
I mean, do you see any reason for optimism?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The report highlights examples of schools and systems around the world that are bucking these negative trends.
Oh, wow.
They're prioritizing teacher well-being, they're creating positive learning environments,
That's great.
showing us that change is possible.
So there are models out there we can learn from and adapt.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the exciting part. The report doesn't just present problems.
Yeah.
It offers potential solutions and concrete recommendations. It pushes us to reimagine what education could look like.
One thing that strikes me about this report is that it goes beyond just the technical aspects of teaching.
Right.
It really emphasizes the human element
It does.
of the profession.
And that's what makes this report so powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just about data points and statistics.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the lived experiences of teachers and recognizing the profound impact that their work has on the world.
Yeah, you're right. At its core, education is about human connection. It's about relationships, the passing on of knowledge shaping the future generation.
Absolutely.
And if we lose sight of that human element, we lose sight of what truly matters.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the global status of Teachers 2024, what's the one message you want our listener to walk away with?
The future of education, and indeed the future of society as a whole, hinges on how we treat our teachers.
Yeah.
If we truly value them, support them, and empower them, they will in turn nurture and educate the next generation.
That's a great point.
It's as simple and profound as that.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you, our listener, for joining us on this journey. It's been a challenging conversation, but a vital one. And we hope it's giving you food for thought and perhaps sparked some inspiration to advocate for the kind of education system we all deserve. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for positive change.